She left him the same day he buried his father.
You! Roku!
Not the next morning. Not a week later when the grief had settled into something manageable. Not even after the last guest had driven away. The same day, while the dirt on the grave was still fresh. Let that sink in for a second. Picture yourself standing there. Black suit, hands folded, eyes dry because you've cried everything out, and now there's nothing left but this hollow buzzing in your chest. The kind that sounds like static and feels like concrete. Your father is gone, the man who taught you to tie your shoes, to shake hands firm, to hold your chin up when the world pushed down. Gone. And the woman you planned your whole future around is standing 6 feet away, checking her phone like she's waiting for an Uber. What would you do? What would you feel? Because Ethan Cole felt all of it. And he didn't say a word.
If you've ever been left when you needed someone most, this one's for you. Hit that like button right now, subscribe, and stay until the end. Because what happens next? Nobody saw coming.
The funeral was held in a quiet corner of New Jersey, 40 minutes outside Manhattan, at a cemetery that sat between a highway overpass and a church that hadn't been painted since Clinton was in office. Ethan's father, Raymond Cole, had lived his final years in modest silence. A small apartment in Newark, a wardrobe of 6 identical grey sweaters, a rotary phone he refused to replace. Nobody at that funeral would have guessed the man had ever been anything but ordinary. The air that morning smelled like wet mulch and exhaust from the turnpike. Grey sky pressing low, a handful of people in folding chairs. 3 of Ethan's cousins, 2 aunts, a neighbor who'd brought potato salad nobody touched, and Raymond's old chess partner from the community center. A thin, sharp-eyed man named Gideon who kept his hands folded on a cane and said almost nothing. Vanessa stood at the edge of the gathering. Elegant, even in grief. Or what passed for grief. She wore a fitted black dress that was 3 degrees too nice for a Tuesday afternoon in Kearny, New Jersey. Her heels kept sinking in the soft ground. She didn't fix it. She just stood there, slightly apart, phone face up in her palm, eyes sliding sideways every 40 seconds like she was calculating the exit. Ethan noticed. He always noticed everything. It was his particular curse. He was 29 years old, no job. The startup he'd poured 4 years into had folded 6 months earlier, taking his savings with it. No apartment of his own anymore. He'd been staying in his father's place while Raymond was in the hospital, sleeping on a pull-out sofa next to stacks of medical bills that grew taller every week. No plan that stretched further than the next 24 hours. His cousin Darius leaned in during the pastor's prayer, voice low and sharp as a letter opener. No job, no money, and now no father. What are you even going to do, Ethan? He said it like concern. It wasn't. Aunt Patricia, 3 chairs down, didn't bother whispering.
Even that
girl won't stay.
Look at her face.
Look at her face. She's already half gone. Vanessa heard it. Ethan watched her jaw tighten, watched her say nothing, watched her not deny it. That was the moment he knew. Before she said a word, before she pulled him aside, before everything that came next, he knew the way. You know a storm is coming, not from the thunder, but from the way the birds go quiet. The grave was filled. The pastor said his final amen. People drifted toward their cars, trading that hushed post-funeral small talk. The kind where nobody says anything real, but everyone feels obligated to keep moving their mouths. Vanessa touched his elbow. Can we talk? He followed her to a spot under a bare oak tree, away from the others. Gideon, the old man with the cane, watched them go. His eyes were strange. Calm, knowing, the way very old people get when they've already seen how a story ends. Vanessa took a breath. She had rehearsed this. Ethan could tell from the way her chin lifted slightly, the practiced steadiness in her voice. I can't do this anymore, Ethan. This. Not us. Not we. This. Like he was a situation to manage. The hospital bills, the uncertainty. I've been patient. I've tried. Her voice was smooth, reasonable, the way people sound when they've already decided and now just need you to nod along. But you have nothing, no income, no prospects, no plan. And now, she gestured vaguely at the grave. This. Ethan looked at her. He had known Vanessa Holt for 3 years, met her at a rooftop event in Midtown back when the startup still had funding and he could afford to be in rooms like that. She was beautiful in the specific way that makes cities feel smaller. The kind of beautiful that expects to be accommodated. He'd loved her, he thought, or something that lived in the same neighborhood as love. He looked at her now and felt the concrete in his chest shift, resettle. "Say it plainly," he said. His voice was quiet, flat as a road. She met his eyes, just for a second. "You're broke, Ethan." A pause. "And you'll be broke forever." She turned and walked back to the parking lot. Smooth, unhurried, heels still sinking in the grass. She got into a black Lyft that had apparently been waiting. The door closed. By the time Ethan walked back to his own car, she had blocked him on every platform, phone, Instagram, email. All of it, gone like pulling a plug. No hesitation, no final text, no "I'm sorry for your loss." Nothing. The next 72 hours were the kind that don't get described in movies because they're too quiet for drama. Just a man in an empty apartment, surrounded by a dead man's grey sweaters and a mountain of debt, learning how truly silent the world gets when everything falls away at once. The calls that didn't go through, the messages that sat undelivered, the landlord's note under the door. 7 days, Mr. Cole. That he read once, set on the kitchen counter, and didn't touch again. Darius called once, just to make sure Ethan had seen the note about the family meeting. Apparently there was a family meeting. Something about Raymond's property, what little there was. Uncle Bernard, who had the personality of a toll booth and the warmth of one, had already started asking questions about the apartment lease. Ethan sat in his father's chair, an old recliner the color of burnt caramel, and looked at nothing. He wasn't crying. He'd moved past that. He was doing something harder, something that takes more muscle than grief. He was thinking, slowly, carefully, in the way of a man who has decided not to panic, not because he isn't afraid, but because panic burns time he doesn't have. On the second day, Gideon came. The old man knocked 3 times. Deliberate, unhurried, Ethan opened the door and Gideon stepped inside without being invited, the way men of a certain age do when they've earned it. He looked around the apartment, said nothing about it. Then he looked at Ethan and said, "Your father was not a poor man." Ethan stared at him. He hid it well. Raymond was, Gideon chose his word carefully, private. About certain things, especially the things that mattered most. He tapped his cane once on the floor. "He told me once, the day your mother passed, what I have is for Ethan, not for the world, for Ethan when he needs it most." Silence. "Why are you telling me this now?" Ethan's voice was careful, not hopeful. He'd burned hope as fuel getting through the last 3 days, and there wasn't much left. Gideon reached into his coat and produced an envelope. Cream-colored, sealed with actual wax, the imprint of a wristwatch pressed into it. He set it on the kitchen counter next to the landlord's note. "A lawyer will come tomorrow morning," Gideon said. "Not me, a proper one. He'll bring the watch." He paused at the door. "Read the letter first, then decide." He left. Ethan stood in the kitchen for a long time, then he picked up the envelope. The lawyer arrived at 9 the next morning. A precise man named Calloway. Dark suit, slim briefcase, the kind of face that gives nothing away. He set a wristwatch on the table. Old gold with a small compass inset on the dial. And waited while Ethan opened the envelope. The letter inside was in Raymond Cole's handwriting. Small, measured letters, each one formed with the deliberate care of a man who knew this would be the last thing he ever wrote to his son. "If you are reading this, I am gone. Do not grieve too long. I did not. Do not trust appearances. Not mine, not theirs, not yours in the mirror when you're lost. Take the watch to Teterboro Airport, private terminal, show it to the gate attendant. Tell them Raymond Cole sent you. Time will open what money cannot. I love you, son. I always have, even when I looked like I didn't. Dad." Then he looked at Calloway. "What's at Teterboro?" Calloway's expression didn't change. I'm not authorized to tell you more than what you've already read, Mr. Cole. But I would suggest you go today. Your father was specific about timing. Ethan looked at the watch. The watch looked back. He showered, put on the only clean dress shirt he had left, clipped the watch onto his wrist. It was heavy, solid, warm from the lawyer's briefcase, and walked out of the apartment without looking at the landlord's note. Teterboro sits in Bergen County, New Jersey, 11 miles from Midtown Manhattan. The preferred gateway for people who don't wait in TSA lines. Private jets, charter flights, corporate shuttles. The kind of airport where there's no crowd, just a series of sleek terminals and men in dark coats who speak quietly into earpieces. Ethan drove there in his father's 2009 Civic. The irony was not lost on him. He walked into the private terminal. Glass, low lighting, the ambient hum of serious money. And a security officer stepped forward immediately. "Sir, this terminal requires authorization." Ethan held up his wrist, the watch. The officer stopped mid-sentence. His eyes went to the compass face. Something shifted behind them. He straightened, spoke quietly into the radio on his shoulder, then looked back at Ethan with a different quality of attention entirely. "Sir," his voice had changed, lower, precise, respectful in the way that isn't trained, but real. "We've been expecting you." And the door opened. What was behind that door? What had Raymond Cole built in secret? And why? And what happens when the woman who called you broke forever shows up at that same terminal 20 minutes later, with another man on her arm and a smirk on her face? The door opened into a world that didn't match the parking lot Ethan had just walked from. The interior of the private terminal was the kind of quiet that costs money to maintain. Cream walls, low amber lighting, leather chairs that looked like they'd never been sat in wrong. A woman at the reception desk. Composed, professional, the practiced stillness of someone used to handling very important people very calmly. Rose when she saw him. "Mr. Cole." "Not a question. Please, follow me." Ethan followed. They moved through a short corridor and into a private meeting room where 3 men in suits were already seated around a glass table. One was older, silver-haired, with the kind of tan that comes from working outdoors in expensive places. The other 2 were younger. Analysts from the look of them, laptops open, folders stacked. The silver-haired man stood and extended his hand. "Harlan Briggs. I was your father's attorney of record for 19 years. His grip was firm. "I'm sorry for your loss. Raymond was a remarkable man." What followed was 45 minutes that rearranged everything he thought he understood about his own life. Raymond Cole. Grey-sweatered, rotary-phoned, potato salad at the community center, Raymond Cole had spent 31 years quietly building a logistics and freight company that operated across 4 states and 2 international ports. He'd started it the year Ethan's mother got sick, incorporated it under a holding company with a name that meant nothing to anyone who didn't know where to look, and structured it so deliberately that even the IRS had never raised a flag. He had done it, Harlan explained, because he'd grown up watching men with visible wealth get targeted. By family, by opportunists, by people who confused proximity to money with entitlement to it. "Do not trust appearances," the letter had said. Raymond had lived that principle for 3 decades. The company was profitable, significantly. The private jet, a Gulfstream G550 purchased 4 years ago, registered under the holding company, was part of the operational fleet. And Raymond Cole had left all of it, every share, every asset, every carefully hidden dollar, to his son. Ethan sat very still through all of this. His hands were flat on the table. His face gave nothing away. Inside, something was moving. Not excitement, not triumph. Something slower and more complicated. Grief and love braided together, the particular ache of realizing your father was deeper than you ever got to know. He hid it to protect me, Ethan thought. He lived small, so I'd be safe. He pressed his thumb against the face of the watch. "I see you, Dad." "There are documents to sign," Harlan said. "We can begin today, or—" "Today," Ethan said. "Let's begin today." They were 2 hours into paperwork when Ethan heard it. Heels on marble. He knew that particular rhythm the way you know a song you wish you'd forgotten. Vanessa had heard. From whom he didn't know yet, though he'd find out later it was Darius, who'd been at a coffee shop near the airport and seen Ethan walk in, and had immediately called everyone he knew because that's what Darius did with information he didn't understand. That Ethan Cole was at a private terminal in Teterboro. She'd assumed, with the perfect confidence of someone who has never been wrong about what they think they deserve, that there was a simple explanation. Ethan was there to beg someone for a job, or trying to look important, or had found some third-tier networking event and dressed it up in his mind as a come-up. She came to see it, to confirm the picture she'd already painted. She brought Dylan. Dylan Prest was the man she'd apparently been seeing, or had been seeing for longer than the funeral suggested, which Ethan filed away without expression. Dylan was 34, real estate adjacent, the kind of man who wore a watch specifically so people would ask about it. He laughed too loud in quiet spaces. He held Vanessa's hand the way men do when they want other men to see them holding it. They walked into the terminal lobby together. Vanessa's eyes swept the room and found Ethan through the glass wall of the meeting room, sitting at a table covered in legal documents, flanked by 3 attorneys. She stopped walking. Ethan saw her. He looked for exactly 2 seconds, then looked back at the document Harlan was pointing to. Vanessa pulled Dylan outside. They talked quickly, heads together, and then both walked back in. This time to the reception desk, where Vanessa smiled her best smile and said something about meeting a friend. The receptionist was polite. She was also immovable. Guests only by appointment, she was so sorry. So they waited in the lobby. Ethan didn't rush the paperwork. It was another 40 minutes before he walked out. He'd signed what needed signing, received the full briefing, shaken Harlan's hand. He had a meeting scheduled for the following week. New York, proper offices, the full operational handover. But today there was one more thing. The aircraft transfer. Harlan's assistant had arranged it, a formality really, but Raymond had apparently specified it in the estate instructions. The jet needed to be formally received by the new owner on site, with staff present. Raymond Cole, even in death, was thorough. Ethan walked through the lobby without looking toward the seating area. He was almost to the exterior doors when Vanessa stood up. Ethan. He stopped, turned slowly. She looked the same as she had at the funeral, still beautiful, still calibrated. But something in her face was different now. A hairline crack in the composure, barely visible, spreading. Dylan stood just behind her, hands in his pockets, performing casual. "What are you even doing here?" Vanessa asked. She aimed for breezy, landed somewhere near uncertain. "Business," Ethan said. "What business?" Dylan's voice carried the specific edge of a man who thinks volume is the same as confidence. "This isn't exactly your scene, is it?" Ethan looked at him, just looked. The way a wall looks at you. Dylan laughed, a short, performative sound. "I'm just saying, no offense." "None taken," Ethan said. He turned back toward the doors. That was when the sound hit. A low building whine that you feel in your sternum before you hear with your ears. Jet engines spooling up on the tarmac beyond the glass. The whole terminal seemed to exhale. Through the wide exterior windows, the Gulf Stream was moving. Being taxied into position, ground crew walking alongside, the plane's livery catching the late afternoon light. Clean white, gold trim. The kind of machine that makes airports feel different. Dylan straightened. Even he couldn't pretend not to look. "Nice," he said, mostly to himself. "Wonder whose that is." The exterior doors opened. Harlan's assistant stepped through and addressed Ethan directly, at full volume with the tone of someone conducting official business. "Mr. Cole, your father's aircraft is ready for transfer. Staff is assembled portside at your convenience, sir." The lobby went very quiet. Not silent. The jet was too loud for silence, but the specific human noise of the room, the ambient conversation and movement, dropped out completely. Vanessa's face did something Ethan had never seen it do. It lost its arrangement. The composure, The poise, the carefully maintained architecture of a woman who always knew exactly how she looked, it all just slipped. Her mouth opened slightly. Her eyes went to the plane, then to Ethan, then to the assistant, then back to Ethan. "Ethan," she started. Dylan took one step backward, then another, a man quietly removing himself from a situation that had stopped serving him. Ethan looked at Vanessa. He let himself look at her properly, maybe for the first time since the funeral. He saw it all. The dawning comprehension, the specific horror of realizing you made a catastrophic calculation, the desperate search for a foothold in a conversation that had already ended. He took one small step back as her hand came up toward him. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just back. Out of reach. "You said I'd be broke forever," he said. His voice was level, no anger in it. No satisfaction either, something quieter than either of those things. Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it. Her eyes were bright. Actual tears or the architecture of them. "I didn't know," she said. "Ethan, I didn't." "I know you didn't." He tilted his head slightly. "That's the part that matters." He turned and walked through the exterior doors. Behind him, he heard Dylan say something low and accusatory. Heard Vanessa's voice go sharp in response. He didn't turn around. He walked across the tarmac toward the assembled ground crew, the plane, the people who had been expecting him, and he did not look back once. The fallout was swift and public, as fallouts in the age of social media tend to be. Somewhere in the weeks before the funeral, Vanessa had posted to her Instagram a quote card with marble background and gold lettering, the kind that gets reshared in certain circles. "I refuse to be with a man who can't provide. Know your worth, queens." She had captioned it, "Some of us have standards." That post had been live for 6 weeks. It had its numbers. A few thousand likes, the predictable chorus of agreement, nothing remarkable. Until someone connected it to Ethan. It happened the way these things always happen. A comment, a repost, a screenshot that arrived in the right group chat. Someone who'd been at Teterboro that afternoon or knew someone who had. The story traveled faster than Vanessa could track it. "That broke man owns a jet." She posted this and then showed up to watch him sign the paperwork. "You fumbled a whole legacy, sis." The comments didn't stop for 2 weeks. Vanessa's DMs became a place she stopped visiting. Her follower count did a specific kind of math that content creators recognized, the numbers going up, while the energy behind them turns hostile. Attention, but not the kind you want. Visibility, but not the kind you built for. She made one video response, deleted it after 6 hours, made another, deleted that too. Dylan left. Not dramatically. He just stopped calling, then stopped responding, then was simply gone. When a mutual acquaintance asked him about Vanessa, he said with characteristic elegance, that situation got weird and changed the subject. She called Ethan 3 times over the following month. He saw the calls, he let them go to a voicemail he'd set up, but never checked. She texted. Long messages, the kind that take 20 minutes to write and arrive in 3 installments. He read them once. He didn't respond. Not out of cruelty, he thought about this specifically, alone in the Midtown hotel suite where he was staying while the estate transfer finalized. He didn't respond because there was nothing useful to say. The conversation had already happened at a gravesite in Kearny, New Jersey, in the rain, and everything since was just echo. She showed up once, actually showed up, at the lobby of the building where Harlan's firm was headquartered, Midtown Manhattan, a Tuesday morning. Ethan was coming out after a 2-hour operations meeting. She was standing near the revolving door in a coat the color of charcoal, and she looked. For the first time in the years he'd known her, like someone who didn't know what expression to wear. He stopped when he saw her, gave her that at least. "Ethan?" Her voice was smaller than he'd ever heard it. "Please." 5 minutes. He looked at her for a moment. The November wind was moving through the canyon of the street, cold and indifferent the way New York wind always is. Cabs honked. Someone's coffee cart rattled across the sidewalk. "I was wrong," she said. "I know I was wrong. I panicked. I was scared and I handled it the worst possible way, and I know that." Her jaw was tight, holding something back. "I know I don't deserve anything from you. I just needed you to know that I know, Ethan said. She blinked. I know you were scared. I know you weren't entirely wrong about the circumstances. I had nothing on paper. I know you've probably told yourself a version of this story where it makes sense. He paused. But you said it at a funeral, Vanessa. You said it standing 6 feet from my father's grave. She looked down. That's not about money, he said. That's about who you are when someone needs you. The wind moved between them. I wish you well, he said. I mean that. He walked past her. His driver was waiting at the curb. A detail he was still getting used to, still felt faintly surreal. He got in, the door closed. He didn't watch her through the window. He looked forward. The company took 4 months to fully transition into his control. He kept most of Raymond's staff. People who had known his father for decades, who called Ethan Sir with a particular warmth, who occasionally told him small stories about Raymond that landed like gifts. He learned things about his father every week. The man had been methodical, patient, and quietly generous. A scholarship fund for Newark kids, set up anonymously, that Ethan only discovered on page 47 of the estate documents. He sat with that for a long time. He moved the scholarship into his own name. Not for visibility, but because he wanted to honor it properly. Raymond Cole Memorial Scholarship, kids from Newark, full rides. He kept the apartment in Newark for 6 months before finally letting it go. He'd go there sometimes, in the early weeks, and sit in the recliner the color of burnt caramel and just breathe in the grey sweater quiet of the place. Darius called twice, attempting something that wasn't quite an apology and wasn't quite a request, navigating the narrow corridor between the two. Ethan was patient with him. He didn't offer anything. He didn't close any door violently. He just gave Darius exactly what Darius had given him. Polite distance. Some doors you don't slam. You just stop walking through them. There's a thing that happens after revenge, or what people call revenge, the version where life does the work for you, that nobody warns you about. It doesn't feel the way the movies promise. There's no music swell, no slow-motion walk into sunlight, no clean exhale of years of suffering released in one moment of triumph. What there is, if you're honest about it, is a complicated quiet, a kind of tired clarity. You see everything that happened all the way back, and you understand it differently now. Not better necessarily, just fuller. Ethan understood that his father had lived a life of deliberate invisibility to protect something. He understood that the people around him, Darius, Patricia, Vanessa, had responded to what they could see, which was nothing, because Raymond had built it that way. He didn't excuse them, but he stopped needing to condemn them either. He understood that Vanessa had showed him exactly who she was, and that clarity, painful as it arrived, was worth something. You can't build anything real on a foundation that cracks under pressure. Better to know. He understood that his father had loved him in the biggest, most patient, most invisible way imaginable, setting up a 30-year surprise for a son he trusted to be ready when it arrived. He sat on the plane the first time he flew it. Not for business, just to feel it, 2 hours over the eastern seaboard and back. And he thought about Raymond in his grey sweaters and his rotary phone, and he pressed his thumb to the compass face of the watch, and he let himself cry. Not the shallow grief crying of the immediate aftermath, the deeper kind that comes when you're ready, that cleanses rather than empties. He thought, I don't know if I deserved this. Then he thought, he believed I did. That was enough. The jet touched down as the sun was breaking over the Atlantic, turning the horizon a specific shade of amber that belongs only to early mornings above the clouds. The crew moved efficiently around him. The city appeared below. That massive, indifferent, relentless city, gridded and glittering and full of people who were, right now, deciding who they were going to be. Ethan Cole looked at it without triumph or bitterness. He was 29 years old. He had a company, a responsibility, a scholarship fund, and a watch. He had his father's belief, banked quietly across 3 decades, drawing interest in the dark. He had also learned, at a grave sight in the rain, that the people in your life are always telling you who they are. The only question is whether you're paying attention. He was paying attention now. He didn't smile as the plane descended. He didn't need to. He was simply, and for the first time in his adult life, ready. Ethan's story isn't really about money. It's about what gets revealed when everything is stripped away. The people who abandon you in your worst moment hand you something painful but valuable. Clarity, and the silence you maintain in those moments. The refusing to collapse, the steady watching. That silence is not weakness, it is preparation. Raymond Cole built an empire quietly because he understood that the loudest thing in any room is rarely the most powerful. He gave his son not just wealth, but the most important inheritance, proof that patience, dignity, and loyalty to your own character will outlast anyone who bets against you. 3 things to carry from this story. 1. Never judge a person's future by their present circumstances. The ground shifts. It always does. 2. Who you are in someone's worst moment is who you actually are, not who you are at the party, or the promotion, or the good day. 3. Silence is not defeat. Sometimes it is the longest, most powerful move on the board. If this story hit different, if you've ever been underestimated, abandoned, or written off by someone who didn't see what you were building, share this with them, or share it with yourself. Subscribe for more stories about people who moved in silence and made the world pay attention. And drop a comment. What would your final words to Vanessa have been? Let's hear it. Justice arrived, not with noise, with a watch, a letter, and a man who already knew how to be still. That's all it ever takes. End.